चलो, I'm rolling.
Camera rolling.
थोड़ा.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Dear Belvedere 21, for several months now, I have been waiting and waiting and waiting to hear from you. Waiting to hear your final decision about my exhibition that you offered me all by yourself and I accepted with much gratitude. To wait is an active verb, one of my favorites as far as verbs and actions are concerned. It is one of the few verbs that I am good at, even if I say so myself. I may have learnt it from my father, who was exceptionally good at it. I have observed him practice and perfect it over years, like a craft. I suppose being a smoker helps do it with less effort. But I think it was his unwavering Allah tawakkul that was the essential ingredient. Mine is not as unwavering as his, but I try. Waiting, when paired with this essential ingredient, is not passive, anxious, or fearful. It is confident, expectant, and patient. This patience is not mere tolerance in the face of adversity or confusion. It is something more than patience. Just like the Urdu and the Arabic word for patience, sabr, means something more than patience. This waiting humbles you. It reminds you that you cannot control events and situations. It reminds you of your insignificance. But it also reminds you that you can choose how you will respond to these events and situations. In that choice, no matter how small it may seem, lies the thing that truly matters. It reminds you that your job is not to succeed, but to try, and to keep on trying, even at the risk of failing. This kind of waiting is transformative. It allows you to unfurnish your mind and heart from things that do not serve you. By you, I mean your inner self, your true self, your soul. Or if you don't believe in the existence of soul, we can call it your essence. That inner voice that gets buried under layers and layers of noise and clutter. But sometimes, if we're lucky, we do catch a whisper or two, unless you have already choked it to death. This essential truth-whispering self, or whatever you want to call it, is mostly at odds with the self that is shaped and defined by the modern world. Its understanding of happiness, success, profit, and loss is not defined by the language of economics. It enjoys a kind of freedom that makes some people dislike it or even fear it. so they often label it as naive, foolish, and unworldly, or even unambitious, perhaps. This unworldly self is very critical of itself, more than it is critical of others. Perhaps it is this self that is trying to reach out to you through this letter. Perhaps it is this self that is trying to reach out to you through this letter. But as this self and I write, she, I, we continue to wonder what is the best way of saying what she, I, we want to say to you. What she, I, we actually want to say is really simple. But maybe it's the simplest things that are the hardest to explain. It becomes even harder when all the words that she, I, we have ever used to think, to speak, to express are losing their meaning at such an unprecedented speed, just as the world is being dismantled at such an unprecedented speed. How do she, I, we string words into sentences and sentences into paragraphs when all language has been rendered speechless? How do she, I, we say it all in a way that we address you as fellow humans as opposed to directors and curators of art institutions? How do we speak to your hearts and not your minds? Not the heart that the Google Dictionary defines as a hollow muscular organ that pumps blood, but the second meaning it offers. That is, the central or the innermost part of something. How do we address that innermost part of you? And even if we were to fail at it, is it not worth trying? Allow me to try. Will it be any easier if I addressed you by your names? Allow me to try. Dear Stella, Christiana, and Louisa, as well as members of the jury for the Belvedere Art Award 2024 copied to this letter. Firstly, I would like to use this opportunity to thank each of you for this very kind acknowledgement of my modest art practice. Thank you for granting me the Belvedere Art Award 2024. I am most grateful to Annette Baldauf and Renate Lorenz, who nominated me for this award. It is indeed a rare blessing to come to a new country as a complete stranger and find yourself in the company of those who not only notice potential in your work and encourage it, but they actively nurture it. I'm extremely grateful to both of them for this act of kindness. To the jury, I extend my heartfelt thank you for the time and attention you so generously gifted to my portfolio. Your statement explaining your decision suggests a close reading of the work, and in this world, where time has become a currency to be saved, spent, invested wisely, your attention to detail, amidst 9 other very deserving and very extensive portfolios, is a gift that cannot be taken for granted. I truly appreciate it. And thanks to Belvedere and Wendemy Projects for initiating this generous Biennial Art Award. This award came with an added benefit, that is, to make new work for a solo exhibition at Belvedere 21, accompanied by a publication. For this incentive to imagine and materialize a new body of work, I am genuinely grateful. Thank you. But gratitude should not be mistaken for indebtedness. And so, despite feeling genuinely grateful, I am writing to tell you in the gentlest possible way that I do not feel obliged to let you tell me what I can or cannot make work about. You cannot tell me that my work for the exhibition at Belvedere 21 cannot be about this or that geographical location or ethnic group. You cannot tell me that I cannot critique this or that colonial regime. You cannot tell me that I cannot include this or that text by this or that author in my work. You cannot tell me that I cannot invite this or that dancer to teach me this or that dance because it might imply solidarity with this or that human. Here, I wrote paragraphs and paragraphs responding to the excuses you gave me for rejecting my exhibition proposal. Too polarizing, controversial, divisive, or how I am such a killjoy because you're missing the joy you felt when you all unanimously chose me for this award. Or how I am wandering too far from my portfolio, which is all about mending, care, community, and love, all the cute stuff. I wrote paragraphs and paragraphs of rhetorical questions about the role of art institutions, and the role of language. I quoted my artist statement to highlight that words matter to me, that I do not use them as artistic or academic jargon for marketability. I drew parallels between my exhibition proposal and the claims I make about my practice. I quoted each of you from your statements, writings, and interviews to ask if words matter to you too. Do you mean them? These were all reasoned arguments, but reason and rationality seems futile in what Berger so accurately describes as the theater of indifference. So I deleted them. A friend suggested that I take out all the personal stuff from this letter. The issue here is not about you or them. It's much bigger than you and them, he said. I agree with him. But this thing that is so much bigger than you and me, isn't it made up of many yous and many me's only? So then how do I remove the you and me from this letter? How do I speak about it in an impersonal manner? I fully understand that museums are primarily businesses, and for good business, they have to protect a facade of neutrality and ignore any moral obligation of art to reflect and to respond. I understand that you have been censoring and will continue to censor exhibitions, even if this freedom of artistic expression is a constitutional right according to Austrian law since 1982, apparently. I understand that in the eyes of certain institutions, some humans are less worthy of becoming the subject of an art exhibition. I fully understand, that human rights is a commodity that needs to be strictly rationed for certain identities. I understand perfectly that decolonial practice is just a fashionable, hot-selling contemporary brand that some artists, academics, and institutions have to endorse to remain relevant. I understand that any critique of any colonial power is always and will continue to be not only forbidden, but criminalized when it's ongoing. I understand that every oppression, every genocide is always dressed in reason, however absurd that reason might be. I completely understand that institutions have the obligation to see that absurdity only retrospectively and not when it's happening. I understand that institutions have to wait another 15 to 20 or maybe 100 years to speak about the absurdity of this one. I understand that sometimes it does take that long for some to feel responsible, guilty for the role they played. I fully understand that art institutions have to wait until it becomes profitable for them to host exhibitions and fund archives about this moment in history, meaning institutions have to wait for it to become history. I have read enough history to understand all of that. But what I don't understand is, how do the yous and the me's that make or unmake these institutions reconcile with it? How do you, I, we reconcile with the roles we each play in this thing that is so much bigger than you and I? Don't we play a role even when we choose to look away or remain silent? Isn't it the everyday choices we make that reveal who we are and who we want to be? Aren't these the small acts of representation we commit in our everyday lives that bring us closer to or farther away from the promises we make? My job is to try and keep the promises I make and to keep on trying even at the risk of failing. Hence, I offered you edits to my exhibition proposal because navigating censorship and finding creative ways to say something as opposed to nothing is part of the job. Those of us from what is these days called the Global South are familiar with this dance, even though we find ourselves a bit confused when we have to dance that dance in the land of the free. But then, you finally made it very clear to me that any direct or indirect expression related to what's happening in Palestine in particular, or the Middle East in general, is not allowed. But I also recall you mentioning that you don't like the phrase not allowed. You prefer not possible. So let me rephrase it. But then you finally made it very clear to me that any direct or indirect expression related to what's happening in Palestine in particular, or the Middle East in general, is not possible. And I should consider exhibiting some of my existing works. The ones about mending, care, community, and love, all the cute stuff. So now I have to choose between staying silent about this century's worst, most horrific man-made crisis while witnessing it live every single day, and remain unaffected by the most nonsensical justifications spat out by those committing and enabling these crimes? Or refuse to have an exhibition at your museum? The choice couldn't be simpler. I refuse. I refuse to participate in this exhibition. I refuse to censor myself in exchange for a solo exhibition at a so-called prestigious museum. I refuse, even if my refusal will change nothing. This letter, in which I have used the pronoun I countless times, is not a singular I. I'm writing this letter in the company of thousands of fellow humans who are refusing to accept, digest, and normalize this desecration of human life, even at the risk of failing, who are refusing to turn their eyes and ears away from the horrors despite the unbearable pain, who are refusing the comfort of ignorance, who are recognizing that there is nothing scarier than losing your humanness, who are committing small everyday acts of representation with greater care and responsibility, who are choosing hope over despair, who are starting to pay attention to that quiet inner voice who are realizing, as Audre Lorde suggests, that only one thing is more frightening than speaking your truth, and that is not speaking. This non-solo letter is also being written in the company of friends who have been with me every step of this entire soap opera. From celebrating this award to brainstorming ideas for the exhibition, and then providing me the best counsel as I write this letter. These friends are a true blessing, especially the ones who don't necessarily affirm and validate my thoughts, opinions, and choices. They call me out on my bullshit. In a culture that has confused friendship with affirmation, likes, and approvals, this honest criticism is an act of care, which is becoming more and more rare, like truth and common sense, perhaps. Anyway, I have to go now. Some of these above-mentioned friends are here for dinner, and we have a party to start. But before I go, I want to wish you all lots of good luck with finding a replacement artist or artists to fill this now vacant exhibition space. I'm sure you'll find someone who will offer you a more palatable escape from the real world. And I also wish you good luck with waiting for all of this to become history. Because as Omar Al-Akkad writes, and we all agree, one day when it's safe, when there is no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will have always been against this. Till then, R.